Nintendo Live 2024 Sydney, our old chums at Nintendo released a new, updated Zelda Timeline. This new timeline would soon spread like wildfire across increasingly more prominent news sites, spreading the word that this was the new timeline, and that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom exist separate from the rest of the series in their own separate continuity. But is all of that true? Well, no is the short answer. This image isn't even anything new. Breath of the Wild has always been shown in its own separate place since its release in 2017, with Tears of the Kingdom being placed right after it when it released in 2023. Despite that, this image still managed to cause mass confusion and re-spark old debates, such as the timeline was never real, not all of the games are connected, or the biggest hot take, that Nintendo never actually cared for the story and only gave us an official timeline to pander to fans who wanted a connection where there never was one. Now, I do believe these games have connections beyond just references, but I'd like to try to understand the other perspective of this, and hopefully clear up some confusion here. And I think the best way to accomplish this is to try building the timeline myself the same way Zelda theorists of old did, going through each game and following the breadcrumbs Nintendo provided, placing each game as it was released without using any knowledge I already have, and pretending I'm experiencing the game for the first time, to see if I can still confidently say all these stories are connected. Now, I won't be going over every detail in these games. That's a whole other series of topics for another day. I'm just going to look for the simplest connections I can find. And of course, spoiler warning for the entire series, obviously. Kicking off our timeline is pretty simple with the two NES titles, The Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2: Adventure of Link. I don't need to do much to prove Zelda 2 is a direct sequel to Legend of Zelda. I mean, Legend of Zelda is about stopping Ganon, and Zelda 2 is about stopping the resurrection of Ganon. And this couldn't be clearer, so there, we already have an established timeline. 2 is all it takes. Next up, we have A Link to the Past, a fan favorite featuring a brand new hero, also named Link, that I can confidently say is a prequel to Legend of Zelda. To prove this, we simply need to look at the instruction booklet for the game. I really do miss the days games came out with instruction booklets that were full of extra lore to be explored. Reading shows that A Link to the Past serves as an origin story to the villain Ganon, revealing on page 5 that before he was Ganon, he was a man by the name of Ganondorf Dragmire. Awesome last name, they really should have kept that in later titles. But with that, we have an established timeline of 3 games so far. Let's move on. Up next, we have Link's Awakening, and this one is really easy to place as the instruction booklet for this game tells you outright. Link's Awakening tells the tale of the hero of A Link to the Past, and how after his first great victory, he set out on a mission of training and so on and so forth. I don't know how it could be clearer this one happens after A Link to the Past. We're getting a lot of use out of these booklets so far. Here we have a heavy hitter that needs little introduction, Ocarina of Time. Placing this one isn't too big a challenge either. We simply need to, once again, look at A Link to the Past's instruction booklet. Really getting mileage out of this one. On page 3, it tells us the origin of this world being created by 3 gods, and we're told this story again in greater detail in Ocarina of Time. We also have Ganondorf Dragmire himself as our villain, so it seems clear Ocarina of Time is telling a more detailed story of the prologue we read about in A Link to the Past's instruction booklet. So we're placing Ocarina before Link to the Past, making it our new beginning. Following that is Majora's Mask. So far, piecing this together has actually been very easy. This one is a direct sequel to Ocarina. It's the same Link, and the game opens recounting the events of Ocarina. It happens after Ocarina. There's no argument on that. Unfortunately, the next game is where things are going to get complicated. Up to this point, building the timeline was pretty easy, but the Oracle games will be a problem for me. The main problem being, I haven't actually, played these games. It's just one of those things I missed and never got back to. And I don't want to spoil too much of it for myself since I do have plans on playing them eventually. Despite my best attempt to avoid spoilers, I do partly know the game's true ending. They've been out for years now, so some stuff was inevitable to see. So that's what I'll have to use to make a connection here. So this is the ending of the Oracle games, and this is the beginning of Link's Awakening. So it seems that Awakening begins where Oracle ended, meaning that the Oracle Link is once again the same Link as A Link to the Past. So we'll just put Oracle between his other adventures. The next game released is Four Swords. And this is the one where I'm starting to understand the argument that everything might not be connected, because I have no idea where to put this one. Just a reminder, I'm trying to build this timeline as games released, so I have to pretend I don't have knowledge of future games when placing this, and this game on its own, at least to me, doesn't give any significant breadcrumbs I can follow to connect it to the others. Four Swords is quite different from what we've seen in the series up to this point. It features a different legendary sword for the hero, still named Link, no relation to the other Links to wield, as well as a new villain named Vati with no relation to Ganon to fight. Vati, starting the game off sealed away in the Four Sword, the seal breaks, and then the game ends with you sealing Vati in the sword once again. Since it's disconnected from the established lore, I can see how people would say it's not connected to the other games. And for now, I think we'll need to put a pin in this one and see if any future releases help us find a connection later on. Time for my personal favorite of the series, Wind Waker. Unfortunately, being my favorite didn't make it easy. You see, along with Wind Waker came a decision. A decision that forever changed how the timeline is viewed. With Wind Waker's release in 2002, the Zelda theorists of old proposed a split timeline. Now that proposition didn't come out of thin air. Wind Waker heavily implies it is an alternate timeline. The intro to Wind Waker, similar to Majora's Mask, recounts the tale of the hero of time, aka the Link of Ocarina of Time. But it recounts the tale from the perspective of people in universe rather than the player. The tale told to us in Wind Waker is that an evil man by the name of Ganondorf Dragmire, yes, I'm going to keep using his full name, seized the power of the Triforce and conquered the Kingdom of Hyrule, until a hero popped into existence from out of nowhere, defeated the evil, and saved them all. As the player, we know Link didn't pop into existence. He drew the Master Sword as a child and woke up as an adult 7 years later, as he was deemed worthy of the sword, but too young to wield it, and that after defeating and sealing Ganon away at the end, Zelda sent him back in time to his childhood, feeling guilty over the 7 years the hero of time lost on his journey. It was Zelda's decision to send him back in time that created this split, and it was a decision that came with great consequences, because before being sealed away, Ganondorf Dragmire swore he'd return, and return he did, to a world that no longer had a hero to stop him, eventually leading into the events of Wind Waker. This branch in the timeline would be dubbed the Adult Timeline, as it is the timeline Adult Link temporarily saved. So now our timeline looks like this. And here we move on to another one that I'm not entirely sure where to place. Four Swords Adventure. No, it's not the same game as Four Swords. Adventure, like the previous Four Swords, features Vati as the villain once again. The hard part is that Ganondorf Dragmire is also a villain in it. And Adventure has him repeat his Ocarina's steps and become the Demon King Ganon. So we have two different Ganondorf Dragmires and two different Ganons. How do I decide if Adventure takes place before or after Ocarina? If you recall, Ocarina serves as an origin story to Ganon, as we see how the man mentioned in A Link to the Past instruction booklet, Ganondorf Dragmire, became Ganon. However, we witness the exact same thing in Adventure. The only major difference being that we never actually see Ganondorf Dragmire in Adventure. We're told about him, and when you finally confront him, he's already become Ganon. So it's actually quite confusing for me to place this game. Adventure's Ganondorf Dragmire is clearly separate from Ocarina's. He's a different character altogether, which means at this point in the timeline, there have been twice as many Links than there have been Ganondorf Dragmires. Looking back at Zelda 2, Ganon is confirmed dead, but it's also shown it is possible for him to return. So I guess the same rules can apply to Ganondorf Dragmire, and since Ocarina's plot still follows elements of A Link to the Past's instruction booklet that Adventure doesn't, I'm confident Adventure happens after Ocarina, but I just don't think I have enough from this game alone to confidently place it anywhere with what's come before at this point. So, much like its predecessor, I'm going to put a pin in it for now and see what happens as we move forward. Things were hard to place for a while there, but we've caught a break with this one. The Minish Cap is actually easy to place, as it serves as a prequel to Four Swords, no, not Adventure, that's a different game, as it shows us the origin story of Vati and the creation of the Four Sword. Another thing I can point to is that Minish Cap implies that this Link is the first Link to wear a hat. Okay, don't give me that look, that's literally a part of the story. The game ends with him getting a hat, implying he was the first hero to wear one, and that all the other Links are copying him. Stop staring, I didn't write this! The point I'm trying to make with this is that I believe this game happens before Ocarina, and is the beginning of our timeline. Jokes aside, Minish Cap's prologue tells the legend of the hero of men, who saved the kingdom before the events of Minish Cap, and the mural of the hero shows that he too was a past incarnation of Link, but he didn't wear the iconic hat. And the Link we play as in Minish Cap doesn't officially get a real hat until the end of the game, setting a fashion trend for future heroes. Since we're putting Minish Cap at the beginning, I think we should take a look at our pinned games here, as I believe we can take Four Swords and put it in between Minish Cap and Ocarina now, as Minish Cap again shows how the Four Sword was created and ends with Vati being sealed inside, while Four Sword takes place an unknown amount of generations later, opening with Vati breaking the seal. Unfortunately, I'm still not sure what to do with Adventure, as I still believe it happens after Ocarina, so we'll leave that pin in for now. So it's time for Twilight Princess, my second favorite game in the series. And somehow my two favorites are a cause of controversy and confusion to the timeline. Let's go ahead and start with the easy part. Twilight Princess happens after Majora's Mask. There are many reasons I know this, but the biggest reason is this character here. This is the hero Shade, and he is the hero of time from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Don't worry, I've got plenty to back up that claim. But I'm just going to stick with the simple stuff. The purpose of the Hero Shade is to teach the Hero of Twilight new sword techniques. And in order to summon the Hero Shade, you need to find these Howling Stones and howl songs that are connected to the Hero of Time, such as the Prelude of Light and the Requiem of Spirit from Ocarina of Time. They even have the Song of Healing from Majora's Mask, which is a personal song to the Hero of Time's journey in Majora's Mask. To further this connection, we are even given evidence that the Hero of Twilight is a direct descendant of the Hero of Time, which is the only time I think we get confirmation of one Link having a blood relation to another. This relation is mostly found through the Hero Shade's dialogue, often referring to the Hero of Twilight as my child and stating, "The skills I have to teach you have entered the realm of true secrecy. They are forgotten ways that do not leave our bloodline." So, yeah, we're placing this one after Majora's Mask on our originally built timeline, now dubbed the Child Timeline. Now, our problem with this placement is, once again, our old friend Ganondorf Dragmire, who shows up out of nowhere roughly 50% through the game to steal the title of this game's villain from Zant, who is being built up until this point. Nintendo's not wanting to leave Ganondorf Dragmire and subsequently Ganon behind as villains has now given us two games that are hard to interpret into the timeline, as Twilight Princess's story doesn't flow as well into A Link to the Past the same way Ocarina did, but since the Ganondorf Dragmire in Twilight Princess is implied to be the same Ganondorf Dragmire as Ocarina, it creates some inconsistencies with the fact that the hero of Twilight, kills Ganondorf at the end. So it does make it hard to flow into A Link to the Past, whereas Ocarina's Ganondorf was just sealed away. This one's now dead, and they were kind of, again, hinted to be the same guy, but yeah, I guess it could still work. There's some inconsistencies in there now, but maybe we'll think of something later. Phantom Hourglass is thankfully easy to place, as it's a direct sequel to Wind Waker. You are the same Link, continuing his adventure where Wind Waker left off. The game even opens recapping the story of Wind Waker. This is an easy placement in the adult timeline. There's not much to say here. Let's move on. Spirit Tracks, another easy one to place. It happens after Phantom Hourglass. You see, Wind Waker Link, the hero of Wind, left with Tetra at the end of Wind Waker to found a new Hyrule, and got sidetracked with the events of Phantom Hourglass, and then continued their quest to find a new land to found the next Hyrule in. Spirit Tracks takes place in a well-established kingdom called New Hyrule. So it seems Tetra and the hero of Wind were successful in that endeavor. We also meet many obvious descendants of characters from Wind Waker, so it's going in the adult timeline. With that, we've reached the release of 2011's Skyward Sword. And alongside this game is the release of Hyrule Historia, a book where Nintendo no longer kept things as big a secret and released the official Zelda Timeline. But before we look at that, let's go ahead and place Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword can be placed behind Minish Cap as the new beginning of our timeline, as it serves as the origin to, well, everything. It's a time before the first Hyrule was founded. It's the story of how the iconic Master Sword was created. It explains why there are new incarnations of Links and Zeldas to stop new incarnations of evil every couple of generations, and so much more. I just really wish Link didn't wear a hat in this game. It ruins the implications of Minish Cap and makes the game unplayable. So with Skyward Sword, here's what I've got as a timeline. And this is a problem, since Hyrule Historia doesn't show what I've made here. Lo and behold, there was a third timeline. This here is the Fallen Hero timeline. Unlike the adult and child timeline that have clues indicating they're split from Ocarina, the Fallen Hero timeline is a what-if situation with no hints of its existence whatsoever, at least not any I was able to find, that has the hero of time losing the final battle against Ganon. I tried really hard to find any evidence of this timeline existing before Hyrule Historia told us it existed. The best jump I was able to make was by once again looking at A Link to the Past's instruction booklet. Now, like I said earlier, Ocarina of Time is really just a more detailed telling of this booklet's prologue. Both tell about the origin of the Zelda universe, both tell us where the Triforce came from, and both are in a way the story of Ganondorf Dragmire and how he became the Demon King Ganon. However, upon further examination, there was one key difference. The booklet doesn't talk about a hero defeating Ganon like we do in Ocarina. It seems that Ganon just succeeded in all his endeavors and was sealed away because no one could stop him any other way. But that's not good enough for me. Truth is, there is no way I would have even considered the Fallen Timeline's existence without Nintendo saying it exists. I even scoured the internet for timelines made by fans before the release of Hyrule Historia in 2011, and I saw many different interpretations, most of which theorized two timelines, but not one suggested the possibility of a third. If you guys know of someone who made a timeline back then who suggested it, please let me know, because I'm really curious what dots had to be connected to find the Fallen Timeline. I really don't think that what I've presented would have been enough evidence to prove a Fallen Timeline exists. I'd like to ask all of you to humor me for a second and enter the realm of speculation with me. I believe Nintendo first brought the Fallen Timeline into existence when they released either Four Swords Adventure or Twilight Princess. Now, in order to understand why I think this, we need to take a few steps back here and talk about Ganondorf Dragmire. As I mentioned earlier, his inclusion in Twilight Princess makes it so that the story can't flow into A Link to the Past in the same way Ocarina of Time did. His inclusion in the game creates some inconsistencies. Mainly that A Link to the Past implies that after becoming Ganon in Ocarina, he was supposed to stay Ganon and not revert back to Ganondorf Dragmire. And in all the games that got moved into the Fallen Timeline, there is no Ganondorf Dragmire. He doesn't exist as that man anymore. There is only the Demon King Ganon. So when a game includes Ganondorf Dragmire and takes place after Ocarina, it immediately causes inconsistencies when placed with what was moved to the Fallen Timeline, which are all the games that feature Ganon but no Ganondorf. And since Wind Waker has the Hero of Wind kill Ganondorf Dragmire, and the game follows a theme of the potential of the future, symbolized by our new Link, the Hero of Wind, and Ganondorf being a foe unwilling to move forward and let go of the past, it would actually destroy Wind Waker's story to include any game with Ganondorf Dragmire in the adult timeline, which is why we get new villains in Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Track. As I stated earlier, Nintendo's unwillingness to let go of Ganondorf as a villain caused so many inconsistencies that they had to make a third timeline just to keep him around. So everything I've placed after Twilight Princess got moved to this Fallen Timeline, and Four Swords Adventure now happens after Twilight Princess, so that's two games that are weirdly placed because Ganondorf Dragmire is in them, as the Child Timeline is the only place he can be included in, since the Fallen Timeline had him reject his humanity and embrace being Ganon, and the Adult Timeline effectively wrote him out of the story. To put it simply, if you want to understand the Zelda Timeline, here's my breakdown. If the game has Ganon and no Ganondorf Dragmire, it's on the Fallen Timeline. If it has Ganondorf Dragmire in it, it's on the Child Timeline. And if it has a new villain like Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Track do, it's on the Adult Timeline. The only exception to these rules is if you can find evidence that the game happens before Ocarina of Time, or if it's a direct sequel such as Majora's Mask. If I haven't made it obvious, I don't really like the Fallen Timeline. I don't think it works narratively, since in order for it to exist, the Hero of Time has to lose. And at the end of the day, I play Legend of Zelda to see a story where good triumphs over evil. Now, I'm not saying that a story has to have a happy ending to be good, but Legend of Zelda specifically is a story I want to see have a good ending. If I wanted a bittersweet ending or a tragic ending, then I'd have played a game I expect that kind of story from. And in Legend of Zelda, I, again, expect to see good triumph over evil. I don't like the idea of Link losing the final battle in Ocarina. In all honesty, I kinda like my timeline even more, even if Twilight Princess doesn't perfectly lead into A Link to the Past, but that's just my opinion. Well, since we've come this far, I may as well place the remaining 4 games before we go back to that updated, new timeline Nintendo released that made me make this video in the first place. A Link Between Worlds. This one's really easy since Nintendo just told us where it goes after it released. But if you really want me to make a connection for you, then the simplest thing is to just point out that it's the same map as A Link to the Past, and the prologue itself recounts the tale of A Link to the Past. So this game gets put on the Fallen Hero timeline between Link's Awakening and the OG Legend of Zelda. Following that is Triforce Heroes, which I did not play and honestly thought it was a spin-off, not related to the timeline, but apparently it's canon. As for its placement, well, from what I understand, the game's director, Hiromasa Shikata, I hope I said that right, stated that it takes place years after A Link Between Worlds and features the same Link. That's all I got. I can't make any game connection because I really don't know anything about this one. Next! With that, we've now reached 2017 and the release of Breath of the Wild. But before we talk about that, I want to jump ahead 1 year just to make my timeline match the one at Nintendo Live. You see, in 2018, they released another book called The Legend of Zelda Encyclopedia, significantly less cool of a name, and in it, they switch the placement of the Oracle games and Awakening, with little to no explanation on why, but we're not focused on that right now. I, again, don't actually have knowledge of those games anyway. Breath of the Wild. With this game comes the new source of confusion. At this point, I'd like us to take a closer look at the new timeline once again. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the thing that grabbed everyone's attention and re-sparked this debate was that Breath of the Wild and its sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, are boxed off from the rest of the timeline, again leading many to think they are a separate continuity. Thing is, the placement of these games has always been left ambiguous by design. It's actually irrefutable that Breath of the Wild is connected to the rest of the series. We just need to look back to the many interviews that took place. Like this one with Eiji Aonuma. I hope I said that right.
Does Breath of the Wild take place before or after Ocarina of Time?
Okay, granted that one didn't answer much, but it does confirm that it takes place after Ocarina. But let's find something more concrete. Here's a quote from Breath of the Wild's director Hidemaru Fujibayashi. I hope I said that right. He stated during a Game Ran interview in 2017, it takes place in an age long, long after any of the titles released to date. It is the most recent age, and because of this, we believe players will be able to easily immerse themselves in the game. Of course, regardless of the time period, the story does unfold in Hyrule, so for those who've played other titles in the series, there will be a lot of recognizable places to enjoy. So essentially, when you're playing Breath of the Wild, it is so incomprehensibly far into the future that this over here is no longer the Legend of Zelda. It's the mythos of Zelda. I mean that quite literally. In universe, these events aren't legends anymore, they're myths. So in Breath of the Wild, everything that happened before is irrelevant. It can effectively be placed at the end of wherever you want it to be. Breath of the Wild does, after all, have references in location, names, dialogue, and even races to all the other timelines. Some people have chosen to interpret this as it doesn't matter what timeline you're on, all events eventually lead to Breath of the Wild, or that all the timelines eventually course corrected with the amount of time that passed and merged back into one, kind of creating a major in-universe Mandela effect for all the characters we know and love. Others just aren't happy with the it's up to the player's imagination approach, but I mean, that's what the series has always been in a way. Let's just look back at Hyrule Historia for a second. On page 68, it says, "This chronicle merely collects information that is believed to be true at this time, and there are many obscured and unanswered secrets that still lie within the tale. As the stories and storytellers of Hyrule change, so too does its history. Hyrule's history is a continuously woven tapestry of events. Changes that seem inconsequential, disregarded without even a shrug, could evolve at some point to hatch a new legend, and perhaps change this tapestry of history itself." What this is basically saying is, we like to view the series as if it's a legend being told, hence the name Legend of Zelda, and like all legends, some things get changed as time goes on. Some things just get lost to history, and some history just gets misinterpreted and reinterpreted in different ways. It's also a pretty effective way to keep the timeline vague enough so that they can insert a new game anywhere they need to at the time. Going through all of this, I can understand how some people can think that the timeline was never real, or that the games aren't connected. Admittedly, mostly in the Four Swords trilogy, these ones actually really are the hardest to place and interpret into anything, and the intentionally placed ambiguity of the series is certainly a cause for confusion, but at the end of the day, I do believe Nintendo always had a timeline and cared about the story of this series. Now, I'm not saying anything crazy like they had it all planned out since the first game in 1987. They definitely made all of this up as they went along. What I believe is whenever they made a new game, it was made with an idea of where it would be placed, intentionally leaving hints for players to find, but never outright giving an answer. And you know what? That's fine with me, because it's fun to speculate and fill in the blanks yourself. Except for the Fallen timeline. That one actually just shouldn't exist. And of course, Tears of the Kingdom happens after Breath of the Wild. If you need me to find a connection and prove that to you, then you might be too far gone for me to be able to convince you of anything. Well, now that we've made it this far, I do hope I've managed to clear up at least some of the confusion about the timeline. What Nintendo released at Sydney wasn't even anything new, after all. I guess the only thing left to cover now is, where does the newly released Echoes of Wisdom go? Well, as much as I'd like to think Nintendo is leaving behind the old timeline and building something new, moving forward from Tears of the Kingdom, based on its announcement trailer, it's probably unfortunately another Fallen Timeline game. Nintendo really seems to favor throwing things at this timeline. I'm predicting it will fall between Triforce Heroes and OG Zelda. Feel free to come back to this video and congratulate and or ridicule me depending on what official answer we hopefully get. But with all of that, all I have left to say is, love you. Mean it. Click. Well, we've hit the end card, everybody. If you're still here, go ahead and hit like and subscribe for me. If I kept your attention for this long, I'd say I've earned it. Your one subscription holds a lot more power than you think it does, and that like will give me a pretty good algorithm boost. And obviously, subscribing will give you the bonus effect of knowing whenever I release something new. And I've got a lot of stuff planned, from Fire Emblem to more Zelda, obviously. There's a lot of videos I want to make, so I hope you enjoy those as much as you enjoyed this one. With that, you go ahead and enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, night, whatever you're at right now. Bye-bye!